between me as a black male and another black male that we just look so alike. And your first month at work, you just couldn't differentiate us two. It's happened. And my thing is, not only do you feel that way, but you felt comfortable enough to tell me that. Like, that wasn't just blatantly disrespectful, that I wasn't my own person. It's also getting on the shuttle bus just to go home, and the shuttle bus driver trying to strike up just casual conversation. We're the only two on the bus, and you ask me, the first thing you ask me is what team I play for. Like, I'm not educated enough, I'm not articulate enough to be here at this campus, thriving and prospering like all these other students. It just doesn't make sense at a level, and that's what racism has become. It's no longer that in-your-face racism, because we now understand that it's just not socially acceptable, no matter who it be. We saw it with the white nationalist protests, those white supremacist protests. Republicans came out in droves condemning that action. But they are okay with cutting affirmative action programs, cutting DACA, things like that. That is still racism. It's just so subtle. It's so subtle in its coded language. So I don't know if you guys hear microaggressions often. If you do, could you throw some out? I can throw some more out. Whether it be you're pretty for a black girl, you talk white, hair. There's so many different things, and we hear this every day we're on this campus.
I got told that before. My friend, she's like, oh, like my parents don't really like black people, but you're one of the nice ones. Oh. You're one of the good ones.
Yeah.
I got it. Good to know. I got you talk good for a black boy.
It's always like two black girls with braids in their hair and they must be related or something like that.
Actually, they had ice cream with me the day after the video got released of the cop, and I was standing in line. There was these football players in front of me, and they're all white, and this black football player comes up, and they're cracking jokes. He's like, we're supposed to be meeting the coach. That's the reason why we're not letting you do hella shade. He's like, you're not letting people eat ice cream. I laughed. And then they proceeded to joke around, and he was just like, hey, the white football player said to the black one, hey, you might want to put more sunscreen on because we don't want you to be darker than you already are. And I was just like, what? I looked around like, and then the black football player was like, that's racist. And he's like, no, it's not. We just don't want you getting any darker. And I'm like, that's hella racist. What do you mean? Like, and it's just like what does it getting darker? We don't say anything when you guys get super red. Like, hey, everybody. And those are like those micro ways of them taking down, but it's not, oh my God, he called you the N-word, but it was just like, did you really just tell me I need to put on sunscreen because you don't want to get any dark skin? It's not your business. If I choose to bake in the sun or not, like, don't want sunscreen because cancer, yeah. But that was exactly the point. But to me, that was crazy. He felt so open, like he didn't like they were whispering, like joking to each other. Like he said it loud, and it just shook me, and I was just looking. I was like, and when the guy would laugh, I was like, that's definitely racist. He's like, no, it's not. I was like, yeah, that's pretty racist. And he kind of looked at me, and he got awkward. But I'm like, you thought that was okay.
Okay, yeah. That's the problem. At the root, that is the problem. That they think that you can say these things, that these are just jokes. But it's not just a joke. It has something to it. It has that component.
And he was dark skinned. So to me, it goes back to in the black community how they put us against each other and put colorism in our communities for us to pit each other against. So like me understanding him as a black man, when black woman, I understand like he probably grew up and got teased for the color of his skin. And he has one of his teammates telling him he needs to put on sunblock so he doesn't get any darker. So that's probably hit him to places where his friend didn't know. So to me, it's just like those little things, and we already know, and it doesn't take him to a white guy to be black to understand that no, you shouldn't say that to a black man or a black woman or people of color in general. But it was just these things that people just dig at, and it's like, oh, well, it was just a joke. No, it's not.
Absolutely. So I guess just moving forward, how I got to this point, I lived in Henderson. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised, and then I moved to Henderson. So living in Henderson, it's predominantly white space. It's completely different than what I was used to, but I mean, as a kid, you don't really notice these microaggressions. There's no one really just outright calling me a nigger in front of my face, but there's definitely microaggressions, and in hindsight, I can understand that. But moving from there, I moved to Canyon Springs, which is down the street from Cheyenne. It's the same. It's the same thing. So it's predominantly black and brown people. That was the space that I was comfortable frequenting. It was a bunch of people. It was a bunch of representation. Like I had not been around that many black people since I had been back in Cleveland. So like I was comfortable, but I was also fed up. There was a lot of things that went on at the school, and I was like, okay, like I'm going away. Like I'm going to another school. I wanted to come here, but they didn't have my major, so I decided to go to Boise State, and that's in Idaho. So that's a radically different like experience than I had at Canyon Springs, where it's let's say 55% Hispanic, 45% black. Like it's radically different. So I get up there and I really start to understand what racism is and how it looks and how it feels. And I think that's what has put me in a position to really sit here today and really like try to articulate how I feel about this and how it kind of affects you. It was crazy. I was told that during a floor vote, I was told that my vote, I was a swing vote actually. I was told that my vote didn't count because I was only worth 2/3. This is in 2015. Yeah, I promise you. I promise you. And if I wasn't trying to get kicked out that dorm that night, then the narrative would have been a little bit different. But it was a bunch of things like that. I had heard the word nigger so many times I got sick. Like at some point I became paranoid and isolated. Like I would sit in a lecture room, and you know how big lecture classrooms are, probably 200 students. And I would be 2 or 3 of the only black students in there. And then I would just kind of have a thought like say anything happened and they just kind of got pissed off at some point. Like they really could get me and I couldn't do anything about it. Like it's just those, as silly as that may sound, it's just like that was the environment that I was in. I couldn't really trust anybody. The people that I called friends, they can get drunk and niggers come out their mouth multiple times. So it's just like, it's an unhealthy environment. It's not anything that I was ever comfortable in. I didn't have that safe space. And it was just those microaggressions. Even the KKK was an active presence in not Boise, but a neighboring city. And they would have rallies and things like that. So these were things I was exposed to. So I was able to move from there to Reno. I transferred after my second year just because I was miserable. There was nothing there for me. It just wasn't healthy. The only thing I could find solace in really was poetry. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X and what else? Oh, To Pimp a Butterfly. Those are the only things that got me through that last year. There just was nothing there for me. So taking that experience, that has, I guess, put me in a position to really understand what racism is, how it feels, and how it kind of affects. And that kind of moved me and motivated me for my research. Is this thing working now? Oh, you take it off? Are you able to go to the field slide? Okay. So yeah, I guess the point of this is I kind of went from not understanding racism at all, like on a fundamental level, being racial profile growing up, things like that, understanding that being black was different than being white. Being black, I couldn't do the same things. I remember I just wanted to go D1, like really playing football and stuff like in high school. I would take runs and things like that, and my mom would be sick. She would not let me leave the house after like 7. Because she's just like, you can't go running out there. Someone's going to think you stole something. You're going to get shot. You're going to get pulled over. There's something that's going to happen. But to me, in my mind, I'm like, look, I'm just running. Like I thought she was being dramatic. But as these things unfold, I'm like, in hindsight, I was really lucky to have her because any of those things could happen, especially like in those neighborhoods. So just moving into my research, there's a few things I pulled out. So I have white space. So white space is just this predominant white space that we're talking about now. This 58% white we have on this campus. So in white space, we often see that diversity, this lack of diversity, lets racism go unchecked. You're able to have those things where people are calling you the wrong names and they're like, oh, well, it's just a mistake. Things of that nature. In class, one of the participants discussed how when Trump was elected, the kid came in the next day and was like, are you ready to go back to your country? Like she wasn't born here in this country. Like this country isn't more than hers than anyone else's. We also see this notion of second-class citizenship, whether that be them protecting Peter as a white nationalist, him having armed protection, and as their arm protecting him, his presence is dangerous for these other students. We have this notion of second-class citizenship where other students are being racial profiled. They're not just being treated the same. When they're going into financial aid, they're being talked to a different way. There's a number of different examples that we see. We also have, we talked about microaggressions being that new face of racism, but we also have community. And I think we see that here with DSO. We see that people like to come together. That's the only way they really find that solace. I didn't have that at Boise. There was no Black student organization because we sat at about 1% of the school, and that's counting the athletes. So if you're actually like really breaking down the numbers, we're less than 1%. But at UNR, we have those things. We have the center. We have opportunities to find that community, to find that solace. And we also have this thing of representation. We have this representation, whether that be Jody, whether that be Miss Kim. We have people that we can go to and we can talk to that can make us feel a little bit comfortable, make us feel as if they really understand our experience. And then we have this notion of survival. It's just that performing in white space. A lot of people refer to it as a switch up. It's I guess a layman's term for like assimilation and respectability. You know how they try to make you act in white space? You can't talk the way you talk. You can't dress the way you dress. You can't act the way you act. Whatever you do is either ghetto or loud. And it's that switch up. You have to change in white space to kind of navigate your space to make sure that you're not stepping on anybody's toes and you're not ruining any opportunities that you have. My roommate referred to it as putting on her white voice. Because when she gets on the phone, she knows that people aren't going to respond to her the way that she needs them to respond if she answers the phone like, hey, what's up? Like, or even just in her regular tone. It's just those things. And maybe that might not happen all the time, but it's a reality that we all must face. So it's just things that I saw through my research, and that kind of helps explain what racism is. And yeah, that's it.
All right, so we always do this. We're gonna wait till this, and then we're gonna clap for it again. All right, start clapping. I just want to thank you. That was really good. Just top to bottom, the stuff you covered, and just your speaking abilities, phenomenal. Thanks, man. Okay, so next up we have a. Next up we have a special speaker. Jeff, can you move the slide? Can you move another slide? We have, of course, Kimberly Thomas, the Distinguished Honor. Okay. How's everyone's day? Pretty good? I saw it. Yeah, we're gonna clap for when she goes. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. I dressed up for y'all. Well, good evening. I'm always excited when the young ones, as I call y'all, invite me into your space. I'm Kimberly Thomas. I also have a business, and I do business as Sister in the Shadow. And I grew up in the state of Alabama, in Montgomery, Alabama. So if you know anything about Roll Tide, that's right. If you know anything about the history of the state of Alabama and its influence in changing the cultures, changing the laws around our country, you will know that's where I come from. My parents were a part of the movements in the 60s, the bus boycott, the march from Selma to Montgomery. So I grew up listening to those stories at the dinner table about change and about how to make it and how to be better than the other person so that you could achieve just almost the same thing as other people achieve sometimes. So I feel like as I think about the name of my blog, Sister in the Shadow, and kind of my pen name sometimes, racism kind of lurks in the shadows also. I named my blog Sister in the Shadow because I felt like I lived in the shadows of lots of people. I lived in the shadows of my family. I lived in the shadows of my sick sister, my sick father, and people thought my life was perfect. And so when I think about racism, I think about how it lurks in the shadows of our communities and in our homes and in our hearts. And as much as we try to look outward and blame other people for being racist or having inklings of racism, sometimes we forget to evaluate ourselves. And so my blog is all about that. It is reflection, and that's what I do every week. So if you know anything about me and you read my blog, or sometimes people read it and then they come see me or call and say, what happened last week? Because it's all about some reflection. I don't know if this is gonna work. Oh, there it is. So racism is what we're supposed to talk about tonight. Racist, that's like the other word that we hear, you know? Race card. Have y'all heard that one?
No.
Never heard playing the race card?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so when I think about those words, I was trying to think, what is it about those words that gets us to where Tristan's talking about, where we're not having real discussions about race because we spend all of our time calling people names and calling each other names and putting labels on one another and on people who don't look like us and people who don't think like us and people who don't really understand us. They are racist. This world is full of racism. And you, my friend, are just playing a race card. Heard that one. So I started thinking, all of it is judgment. There are words of judgment. And when you judge other people, you get that emotion. And then we all start to function out of this place of emotion. Whether we're angry, whether we're afraid, as in what some people are expressing now that Peter is here, there's some emotion because he's a racist. But he says he's not an angry racist. I don't know what that means. But that's what he said. I didn't make that up. That's what stood out to me. I must tell you all, too, that afternoon when Peter made everybody's social media threads, I was at my house minding my own business. And trying not to watch anything about Charlottesville. If you know anything about my job, all I do is deal with chaos all day. So sometimes I just go sit and do mindless things, like watch Tiny House. That ain't got nothing to do with nothing. I'm probably never gonna have a tiny house, but I just love watching it. It's so cool, right? So that's what I was doing that Sunday afternoon. I think it was a Sunday. And then all of a sudden I got 2 emails. And I was like, interesting. Wonder what this is about. I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna see, okay. And then there were 5. And then there were 20. I thought, oh my goodness, I guess I better read. So I look, and something's happening in Charlottesville. I said, okay, you're gonna have to turn the TV on now and flip over there and see what happened. I was like, oh dang, it's gonna be a week. Then someone sent me a text message, in case you didn't see this. The text message was my name, my email address at work, and my office phone number on Facebook. I said, oh shoot. Then I got another text message. My name was on change.org the petition would be delivered to me, they say. There I was on Twitter, and all of a sudden, I'm reading the emails. They say, I am raising racists on this campus. It is me who teaches people to be neo-Nazis. It is I, responsible for Charlottesville. Oh my gosh. So all of a sudden, I'm trying to figure out how black me would really look walking with a torch in front of those guys in Charlottesville. Yeah, so clearly they didn't know me, but they judged. And what I find that I felt some isolation because I wasn't responsible for any of that. Much like you talk to a lot of white people now, they say, well, my people didn't have slaves. I'm not responsible for the hatred you encounter. Why must you blame me? Well, I'm really not blaming you, I'm just saying. Some stuff happened. And it happens to me more often than you. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying, I'm gonna need you to recognize that. Affirm me in just that little way, if you would, all right? So, people start to feel hurt and anger when you point your finger at them, because they have nothing to do with it, right? So, I decided I had to reflect on myself, on my own ignorance, because that keeps me from pointing fingers outward when I think about myself. So I thought about myself as a high school student at a football game, and I had a friend who I called a friend, and I won't call his name, I'll call him E. And he was Jewish. Now I went to Christian church, we talked about Jews at church, but that's just all it was. It was talk about Jewish people at church in the Bible. I didn't understand what that meant about Jewish people in a culture and a race of people. So I didn't know that when the white boys at my school were doing a cheer, J baby, it was a call and answer, call and response. E baby, E baby, W baby, what was that? Jew baby, Jew baby, Jew baby, and they would all cheer. My friend would stand there with this awkward smile and act like he was okay with it all. It wasn't until I had children and they had Jewish friends that I realized that was racist. And I was complicit because of my ignorance. I learned later, when my daughter had a gay friend, that it was not okay for us at the family reunion to be silent when the cousin we believed was gay brought his friend to our family reunion. No one ever said he's not welcome, but no one ever said, hey, what's your name? Who is that? We didn't ask. It was silent. It wasn't until my daughter had a gay friend that I decided I needed to do my homework. I worked with Young Life, and we had children who were questioning who they were and their identity. And I figured, I like these kids a lot. I really need to learn some more. So I went to a physician to ask questions. Talk to me about biology. Help me understand what I don't understand. I was ignorant. I've lost one friend, I think, because of my ignorance, and I've tried to reach out to her a number of times since. She was in my law school class. And she asked me a question about gay people. I gave her the Christian response from the neighborhood, right? All these years later, I've tried to find her to say, you know what? You should have challenged me at my core, and you didn't. She may never know what my position is now, and that I did some work. It's hard work to get to know people. It's real hard work. But we gotta do it, or we're gonna always be in that place where we're not having discussions. Respect their story. I tell people all the time, just because it didn't happen to you don't mean it didn't happen to somebody. Just because it ain't your testimony don't mean it ain't real. And sometimes that's what people think, because it didn't happen to them, and it didn't happen to their friends, and it didn't happen to nobody on their block, then you lying. And they won't affirm people. Well, it's probably not happening to you because it's not intended for you. You're not experiencing it because it ain't intended for you. The last one, just because you're not responsible for it, don't mean you can't make a change. So, my people didn't own slaves either. But I'm working on that, right? All right. Then you got to reset your whole temple, head to toe. Got to change the way you think. Got to get rid of that anger. You can't respond with emotion. If you look at any sports team, there are so many lessons to learn from sports teams. They have very short memories, most of the athletes, because they have to. You can't remember the mistake that just happened. They don't go onto a field if they intend to do anything successful without studying. They study their own position. They study what's going to make them better at that. They study the people next to them and what's going to make them better. They study the people across from them. It's like a chess match you're playing. I'm not saying we're playing this game to win or to beat somebody, but we're never going to get ahead. We're never going to move forward as a culture, as a people, as a society, if somebody then decide they're going to take a step back and reset. There's a whole